Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Integrity Systems Company 2025 State Webinar Series, partnered with the Queensland Department of Agriculture. My name's Xander Bennett, and I'm with the communications team here at Integrity Systems Company, and I'll be facilitating tonight's webinar. Just a few housekeeping things before we kick things off. Just so you're aware, today's webinar is recorded. And we will be sending out a recording of today's webinar along with some other resources, any questions that get asked, and some other information within the week. So keep an eye out for that. While we're on the topic of Q&As, today's webinar is a really good opportunity to ask everyone here at ISC and Queensland Department of Ag any burning questions that you might have more broadly or in relation to today's content. So if you wanted to drop any questions down in the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen, feel free to do that at any point. We've got a few team members behind the scenes who are ready to answer any questions there should you have them. But without further ado, we'll jump into the agenda for today's webinar. Firstly, I'll do a bit of an introduction, a bit of a reminder of who ISC is, what we do in the Australian red meat industry. And that'll be before I hand it over to Elizabeth Bradley, who is the Manager of Quality, Policy and Compliance here at Integrity Systems Company, who will be providing a bit of an update on the LPA program, what's been going on over the last 6 months and into the next few months. So she'll discuss the geolocation sharing for the new EU deforestation requirements and what your obligations may or may not be there. She'll touch on the new animal welfare management plan that's been introduced to the LPA program and any requirements you have in relation to that, before speaking a bit on the new harvested rangeland goat program. So lots of exciting work happening in that space that we'll hear from Elizabeth. We'll then be hearing from John Asmus, who's the Digital Product Manager here at ISC, who'll be providing a bit of an update on the Electronic National Vendor Declaration System. He's been doing some really exciting work over the last 6 months and into the next 6 months around the web-based pick search function and the integration of eNVD and the NLIS database, which he'll run us through. I'll then give a quick reminder on the mandatory rollout of sheep and goat eID, just touching on some more information there, and before handing it over to Natasha Teddy, who is the ISC Operations Group Manager, and she'll be providing a bit of an project update on the NLIS Database Uplift Project. That's the new uplifted NLIS that's being built at the moment. I'll then pass it on to Doug McNaught, who's the Senior Project Officer for NLIS at the Queensland Department of Ag, who will be providing the state partner update there. But first of all, just a bit of a reminder on Integrity Systems Company, who we are and what we do in the Australian red meat industry. So we, Integrity Systems Company, manage the two key integrity programs in the Australian red meat industry. That is the NLIS, or National Livestock Identification System, which is the system that we use for tracing livestock between properties and throughout the supply chain in the event of an emergency disease outbreak, and also for traceability purposes to maintain that market access both domestically and internationally. We also manage the Livestock Production Assurance Program, or LPA, which is the on-farm assurance program that covers biosecurity, animal welfare and food safety. And connecting those two programs is the National Vendor Declaration System, or eNVD. And all this ties together in the Australian red meat integrity system to increase and maintain the domestic and international market access that we've got, ensuring that our products, red meat products, continue to meet customer expectations and that we're providing that safe red meat that our customers know and love. So that's a bit on ISC. I will now hand it over to Elizabeth to provide the Livestock Production Assurance update.
Thank you, Xander, and hi everyone. Nice to be here with you today. As Xander mentioned, I'm going to run through some key things that we've been doing for the Livestock Production Assurance program to make it even better and do more for you. To start off with, I'm going to talk around the European Union's new requirement around sharing geolocations, and that's all around the deforestation commitments they've made in order to, decrease deforestation globally. I'll also talk about the Animal Welfare Management Plan, which is our brand new requirement, and just touch briefly on the harvested rangeland goats in the program as well. To kick us off, we can talk around market access to the EU, especially for cattle producers. So this is a new requirement that's coming into force from the 31st of December this year. So that means any beef products and leather and hides going into the EU from that date have to comply with this new requirement around deforestation. The EU market is a high value market for Australia. For the beef and the beef product side of things, it's around $150 million a year that we make from exporting to that market or those countries. And the leather industry also has another $50 million on top of that as well. So the key thing to note here, though, even though we do have the EU program that is covering off the beef export side, leather can come from any cattle in Australia, not just the EU ones. So this new requirement really applies to all cattle producers and making sure we can continue to export to the EU. The key requirement for this is around being able to provide the geolocation for the lifetime of each animal that, gets kind of put into a consignment that goes across to the EU. So we've got great systems in NLIS. We can get lifetime traceability and know the properties that every animal's been on in its lifetime. But what they actually want is the importer needs a list of all the geolocation, so like a GPS point, if that's what you prefer to call it, where those animals have lived in their lifetime, and that has to be provided to them to be able to confirm that deforestation requirement on import. So what we've developed with the program is the ability for cattle producers in particular, to opt in to share their geolocation through their LPA account and permission the sharing of that information through the NLIS database. So the security around that is making sure that only exporters can get those geolocations out of the NLIS system and be able to provide them on through into the import documentation. It's all around deforestation and forest degradation back for the last 5 sort of years, and it's got to do with conversion of forestry land into agricultural land use. So in terms of assessing deforestation, if your property is zoned as agricultural land use, generally it's okay. It's more looking at that illegal land clearing where there's been a prosecution, where that's the concern for us. The way to do it's quite simple. It's logging into your LPA account. There's lots of prompts on screen now that you can click on that will take you straight to the location. There's a little mapping tool in there where you can pin your location that represents your pick. If you have multiple parcels of land, you just need to pop one location on that kind of best represents it. If you have multiple picks, you'll need to do it for each pick. And most importantly, the EU applies this regulation to every country in the world, not just Australia. It applies to the importer or the person in Europe that's actually, selling that product. So it's not part of the regular trade agreements that we have through the government, which makes it a little bit of a different situation. Most importantly, we are classed, or Australia is classed, as low risk in terms of deforestation. So the EU doesn't check as many of our consignments against sort of the rules and regulations as other countries who are more likely to be high risk for deforestation and doing illegal clearing. So it really helps to maintain exports. So if you do have cattle, we really encourage you to jump on and share that with geolocation so that, continue to get premiums for hides and leather, and also if you're EU particularly, that your beef can continue to go and access that market. If you have any other questions, feel free to pop them in the Q&A and we can get to them as well. I know it's a little bit confusing, but the simplest thing is to remember just to share your geolocation. Okay, so moving on to the Animal Welfare Management Plan requirement in LPA. So this is our most newest requirement or feature that we've added to the LPA program. It's been in there for just over 2 months now. So the requirement's been added to the LPA standards. So there's already existing animal welfare requirements in LPA, and this just enhances and strengthens those requirements as well. So the requirement's now to have a documented animal welfare management plan, which demonstrates how you meet the Australian animal welfare standards. And all it's doing is asking you to basically write down how you meet those standards through a tool that we've developed in the LPA database. This move comes from a request from industry to really strengthen the transparency and trust we provide in LPA in relation to animal welfare, because we do export around 70 to 80% of the red meat that we produce in Australia. A lot of that's going to consumers and customers internationally, and they have expectations around being able to prove how we do animal welfare. So this is all around strengthening that and showing that proof to our international trading partners that we can meet those expectations. This tool has been available in LPA accounts and as part of LPA accreditation and reaccreditation since the 23rd of June. So if you've done your accreditation recently, you would have completed it. It just sort of flows in as part of the questions. And it is available to complete at any time through your LPA account. So you can jump into record keeping and then answer the questions through there. It generates a document for you that you can go back in and edit and update the things as you need. So it's as streamlined as possible. We're trying to balance that between, minimising your time of doing things for compliance, but then also making it robust enough that we've got that proof that we need. So from the 1st of September, which is only a few days away, if you are having an LPA audit, auditors will be checking if you have completed that plan or not. And it's simply a check of if you've got it or not. And then after everyone has one in place, then we'll start looking at what else we might need to do in that space. In terms of the actual tool itself, it took us about 18 months to deliver or develop with industry. And what we've done is we've based it on the animal welfare standards and guidelines, which are national documents that harmonise how legislation can kind of pick up those requirements in relation to welfare. Now, these standards, having access to these standards and understanding and doing training in these standards is already part of LPA. So this is the next step in terms of just documenting how you meet those standards. It's common sense things that you'll be doing all day, every day. It's more just about that proof and that evidence that we have to show. The standards are species specific, and so is the tool. So if you only have cattle, you'll only get questions about cattle. The same thing for sheep and goats. It also asks you specific questions around what type of husbandry practices you do, so that you only get questions about those husbandry practices and not the ones that you don't do. So again, dynamic, it's trying to streamline and reduce the amount of time spent completing the tool. But in terms of the actual requirement, it actually just shows you the standards that applies, asks you a question how you meet it, and then you answer that question through either multiple choice answers, or you can type a short answer as well. There's lots of guidance in there, so if you get stuck or you're not sure, you can actually click on the little help tools and it prompts you as to what it's asking as well. I do have a short video to play, which just explains it quite nicely around how things work. So I'll just stop talking and play this video for you so you can get a better idea about how it all works.
There's a new animal welfare tool for the Livestock Production Assurance program. The Animal Welfare Management Plan makes LPA accreditation and reaccreditation clearer about ensuring good animal health and welfare outcomes. There will be some extra questions in the self-assessment when you renew accreditation every 2 years, but the underlying requirements haven't changed, and there's no extra cost. With Livestock Production Assurance, Australia's cattle, sheep and goat producers already commit to Australia's animal welfare standards. The new tool gives consumers and our markets a stronger basis for preferring our red meat. So let's see how it works. Log in to your LPA account. Click on Record Keeping at the bottom of the screen. Or just go to Account and select Record Keeping. Choose the Animal Welfare Management Plan option. Confirm your on-farm activities, and from here the questions are tailored specifically for the livestock you work with. If you produce sheep, you won't get questions about cattle or goats. You'll be asked to read the relevant animal welfare standards for each section and answer questions with either multiple choice or free text answers. Guidance and links are at each question to help. Once you've completed it, an Animal Welfare Management Plan document will be created. You can then download it as a PDF, but it'll also be stored in your LPA account for easy access and updating. It'll be available anytime via record keeping. The Animal Welfare Plan tool is available for completion anytime in your LPA account. You'll need to do this as part of your reaccreditation, and it'll form part of LPA audits. The Livestock Production Assurance program is all about improving transparency and traceability for Australian red meat and backs the standards we uphold in Australia, including animal welfare. The Animal Welfare Management Plan gives our markets more confidence that our producers are delivering animal welfare to the best standards in the world. For more information, head to the Animal Welfare page on the Integrity Systems website. integritysystems.com.au/on-farm assurance/animal welfare.
Okay, so a few more things on animal welfare before we move or change topics. So first of all, if you're a bit of a media buff, you might have seen some media around LPA and working dogs. So we just sort of want to set the record straight in that this new Animal Welfare Management Plan tool, it's the same standards that were in place beforehand. And there was a bit of media around it saying that we were restricting working dogs, which is just not the truth. So we just wanted to put that out there and make sure that everyone understands that. There is a question in the Welfare Management Plan tool that talks around, if you have sheep in particular, handling aids and dogs being, used appropriately. And that's all it says, which is quite appropriate in terms of how they get used. We love dogs, so yeah, just wanted to set the record straight around that one. In terms of the transition plan, so if you haven't completed your Animal Welfare Management Plan yet, you can jump in and do it any time through your account. If you do get picked for an audit though, the audit notification letter will have a reminder in there that that's now part of the program, so you can jump in and do that before your audit. If you don't get to it before the audit, that's okay. The auditor will just issue you a notice and you'll have another 30 days to complete that after the audit as well. So just keep that in mind, especially if you're getting audited. If you don't get to it and you're lucky enough not to have an audit before you complete accreditation next, it'll be part of that reaccreditation process. It's pretty seamless in showing you the questions. So just keep that in mind as you go through with your LPA. I'll just talk quickly now around the harvested rangeland goat module. So this is the first module that's kind of voluntary or optional in the LPA program. We launched it last year in October, but it's in line with the rollout of sheep and goat eID that started from January this year. It's all around maintaining the pathway for wild goats or harvested rangeland goats to continue to move without an NLIS device. That pathway is really controlled in terms of those goats have to move from the point of capture to a depot and then into processing without a device or straight from capture to processing. It comes with a few key changes around a new eNVD type once you get accreditation in this module and an update to the goat eNVD as well. So it's really around maintaining and controlling and strengthening that pathway for these specific goats. In terms of the goats themselves, it's a very tight definition of them. So they have to be from a wild state, can't be, born as a managed part of a breeding program or subject to any husbandry procedures or treatments. And again, they have to move through that pathway that's really quite tight. So directly from capture to slaughter or via one registered goat depot. If they fall out of that definition at any point, then they have to get tagged and then they're consigned as regular goats through the supply chain. Registered goat depots, there's not a great deal of them in Queensland, but they can only hold them for 10 days as well. So it's a really short time frame for these goats to be in the supply chain as well to minimise that risk in terms of traceability and diseases. In terms of the changes, if you do have goats or you capture these goats, you need to have the harvester rangeland goat NVD to consign goats device free, or those ones that meet that definition. And the previous version of the goat NVD has now become invalid. So if you do have goats, you'll need to make sure that you use the right version of the goat NVD to do that. If you use the Electronic National Vendor Declaration System or the eNVDs, you'll always have the right version available for you, and then you don't have to buy a new book because you can use them for free. But that's all on HRGs, or harvested rangeland goats. If you do have any other questions about EUDR, Animal Welfare Management Plan, or HRG, or anything else in relation to LPA, please pop them into the Q&A. I'm on the call for the rest of the afternoon as well. But that's one more thing before I go. If you do have another probably immediate thing around LPA has been some talk around renewables and how that interacts if you've got renewable infrastructure on your property. So we've got no prohibition or restrictions on having things like solar panels or wind turbines or anything like that on properties. In relation to LPA, you don't have to declare it on your NVDs. There's no specific audit requirements around this. But just keep in mind, as you would with any type of infrastructure on your property, to consider it as part of your property risk assessment, especially as it might degrade or break down or degrade with age, and making sure you've got those monitoring practices in place to keep your property and your livestock safe. So just to put that out there, no restriction in relation to that infrastructure. But that is the end of my section today. So what I'll do is I'll hand over to John, who will run you through some cool improvements to the eNVD web system. So thanks, John.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Afternoon, guys. Thanks for the opportunity to have a quick chat about what we've been doing in the eNVD space over the last couple of months and what we're intending on putting out there. As Xander mentioned, I'm the digital product manager, and my team looks after all the changes that are going into all the products that ISC look after. And today we'll just be highlighting a couple of recent changes and to-be changes in the eNVD space. Next slide, thanks. So the two main things that we've been looking at, the first one is around the integration with NLIS and making those two systems work a little bit better. As the slide mentions, we've been investing a lot of money and time and effort into the eNVD and looking at ways to improve it and kind of focusing on feedback from the industry around regular pain points. One of the key areas that's been coming up is because eNVDs use much the same data or kind of bits of information as the movements within NLIS that your compliance obligations insist on having. We've seen that there's a good opportunity there to integrate those two systems together and make that process of recording the movements a little bit easier for everyone. So as I go through the video and the demonstration, we'll go through like a short kind of demonstration of how that works and what the benefits are and the time savings. The main thing is that you'll be able to do the movement within eNVD and you won't have to log out of one system and go into another one as a receiver responsible for those movements. The other area that we've been looking at, and this has been a particular pain point, is the ability to find the destination pick within eNVD. Because we get different data sets from all the governments across Australia around picks, being able to provide a really nice, simple way of finding picks has been a bit of a challenge in the past. So we've been thinking about how do we make that easier for everyone, and I'll go through the three areas that we're doing to help that out and relieve that pain point, and that will be coming in the eNVD quite soon. Next slide, thanks. So just to focus on the first bit in terms of the integration, at the moment it's only available in the web users on the web platform, and we're focusing on property transfers that you would do within NLIS. It's completely voluntary, so there's no obligation for any participant in the movement to add devices to the consignment, but we see if they are added that they give multiple benefits. The first focusing on, I suppose, the receiver of the consignment, if you're choosing to use eNVDs. You can, as I mentioned, do the transfer that you're required to do as a receiver within NLIS through eNVD. So you don't need to, as I mentioned, log out of eNVD, go into NLIS, remember your passwords, then find the transaction to do, and then enter the same information that you've already got within eNVD. So we see that as a big time saver, and we know that you guys don't want to be interacting with our systems longer than you have to. So it's a good opportunity to be able to do, kill two birds with one stone in that respect. The other area is if the sender adds devices to the consignment, as soon as that consignment is submitted, those devices and any validations that we've done against them are provided to the receiver. So you get forewarning of the devices that you're going to receive. You can see if there's any kind of inconsistencies with what you're expecting, or any potential pain points with those devices. So we see that that's a benefit from a sender's perspective, because you can check them as soon as you add them to the consignment, and you have an opportunity to edit or update or correct any errors with that. But also the receiver. So as soon as it's submitted, you can go into eNVD, have a look at that, and you'll see full visibility of all the devices that the sender is sending you. Next slide, thanks. So here's just a quick video just to kind of outline the feature, and then after this, I'll run through some really quick, easy to understand examples in the demo.
Want NLIS livestock transfers to be simpler? Well, there's now an option to complete NLIS movements directly through the eNVD web system. For eNVD-ready receivers, it's a game changer. No more having to go into the NLIS to do livestock transfers. The option to do it in the eNVD web system is both simpler and faster. For senders, help your eNVD-ready receiver get the transfer right and cut your PIC reconciliation admin. Just preload an accurate device list to your eNVD for the receiver to transfer. So what's in the NLIS database matches what's in your paddock. Receivers can preview the device numbers heading their way, pick up any statuses, and plan ahead for a smoother transfer. The National Livestock Identification System and the Electronic National Vendor Declaration are now more connected than ever before. So traceability and compliance are handled in a streamlined process, all in one place.
All right, so let's dive into that, and I'll show you how to simply do that from a sender and a receiver's perspective. So as I mentioned, it's only available in the web side of things at the moment. We are looking at how people are using it within this platform, and there are plans to extend it out in a couple of areas to make it available for app users as well, but also have the ability to potentially integrate with scanning hardware that you guys might use on farm. But just to do a quick example here, we'll just use the web. So what I'll do is I'll just create a new consignment, remembering that if I use a template, this is the easiest and simplest way of creating a consignment, because you have all the forms filled out, and all you need to do is just update some specific things around that consignment. So I'll just select a cattle one here. I know where it's going. All I need to do is just update the date. So we'll move it today. I'll go in and just edit the number of head that I'm moving as part of this consignment. So we have 19 with electronic ear tags. Okay, and then finally, because everything else is pre-filled, I just need to click the declaration, and then I'm ready to submit the consignment. So at this point, the consignment has been submitted, and you'll see that we have this new function here about how to start that movement off your property. So as a sender, you can help the receiver in this process by adding the devices. To do that, just click on this button, and you're presented with this screen. So you can there's two options here. You can either upload a file. So if you're doing a large consignment and you use scanning hardware on your property, you can get the session output of that. We cater for most of the scanners output. And as long as you load it up as a CSV or a text file, we'll accept it as part of this function. Or if you've just got smaller stock and you have the IDs in your black book or something like that, you do have the option to put it in manually. For this example, we'll load up a file, so you can just choose the file, load it up, and then through the next step. And at this point, we do a check against NLIS. And there's a few things playing back here. And just to give you an example of how we potentially play back issues with the devices that you're adding. As you can see here, we've got an error, and we can validate that the ID that you're loading is correct and a valid ID. So in this instance, it's invalid. So it might be a bad read, or you've put in a device from something else. So we can call that out explicitly, so you can edit that at this point. The second error or warning that we're playing back to you is that this device that's been added is not on your pick. So that may indicate that either you're moving off this animal before moving it onto your pick, and you may have missed the transfer. And this can obviously have some impacts to lifetime traceability and so forth, and cause issues when it gets to the receiver. So we can call that out at this point. So what I'll do is I'll leave these guys here. So as I said, this is voluntary. You can leave it as this, and it will then go on to the receiver to review. So if I switch personas and go to a receiver of that consignment, I can see that I've got an incoming consignment here. Through here, I can see that the tags have been added to the consignment, and we do pop up this information to kind of explain to you. So if you're not 100% sure what it means, there'll be some like tool tips and helps as you go through. If I want to go and have a look at what's been added by the sender, I can use the view NLIS devices. But as it's pointing out at the top to you, to actually do the movement or do any review of this, you need to switch to your NLIS account. So we do have the ability to link your LPA account and your NLIS account through MyMLA. If you haven't done that, there's plenty of collateral on the comms teams have put up on our website, or there's a quick link here to give you a guide on how to do that, so that you can do the next steps within the movement. So what does that mean? So in this example, I do have an NLIS account linked to my LPA profile. So when I switch to that, I still see the incoming consignment, but what I can do is complete the NLIS movement now. So as I go in, I still see that I've got errors and warnings, but I can actually do something about it now. So for this example, and to just explain that you can, as a receiver, do this without the sender adding the tags. You can do it yourself. I can choose to replace the tags because I know what's been received, and it's the same pattern. So we can upload the file. So in this case, I'll choose one that has no errors. And then I push it through, and you can see that all these devices are okay. There's no issues, there's no warnings, no errors. And all I need to do to move it onto my pick is click this button. And then what happens is that does the P2P transfer within NLIS. You'll still get the same notifications from the NLIS database. So the receiver will get a notification of the movement, and also the sender of the move off. So everything is the same. It's just that you're facilitating that movement from within eNVD instead of having to go to NLIS. If I want to go back and have a look at what's happened, you can see that the movement is complete. And if I view down into the details, I can see that the upload ID is presented to me. So if you did want to go into NLIS for a reference, you have that, and then just a summary of what's happened and the date. We also have a quick link into NLIS too there if you need to log in and double check what's going on there. So that's just the integration piece. The next thing that I was just going to quickly touch on is the improvements around the pick search. So through our kind of consultations with people in the industry, obviously there was some feedback saying that it's not super easy to find the destination pick. Everyone knows their own pick, obviously, pick number, but not necessarily where the consignments are going to. So one pattern that was working really well with users of the app is the ability to filter down some information before they have to select the destination pick. And in the example shown on the screen, you can see that if you select the state that you're in and the type of pick that you're sharing the consignment with, then you will be presented with a much smaller list of things to choose from, and you can further refine that by putting in a town or a suburb name. So what we took from that was that obviously there needs to be some more tools given to the user to be able to find the correct destination pick. So the pattern that we kind of landed on through, and we pushed out a survey and we got some great responses back, was taking that filter concept and applying it in a couple of different ways. So what we're going to do is we're going to present these three options. So if you're moving the livestock to, which you'll be familiar with, we'll give you three options. The first one is that you've used the destination before. So recognizing that most people interact with the same destination, we'll present the last 10 recently used destinations to the user. So by clicking on that button, we'll be able to pop up with clear indicators of the types of picks that you're dealing with, whether it be abattoirs or feedlots or another producer, and you'll be able to select from a recently used location. The second option is around I know my pick, and that's much the same as what you've got now. And the third option is that you may have some details. So you may have not used it before, but you don't know the pick, but you kind of roughly know where it is and obviously what state it is. So as I mentioned before, we'll be presenting some filter options. So you'll be able to select the state, the suburb, the pick type, and then add in any other keywords. And you'll be presented with a list of options to select. So hopefully you get to the right destination far quicker than you can now. Okay, I think that's me for those. Thanks for your attention.
Thanks for that, John. Some really exciting improvements being made to the eNVD system there. I did forget to mention also, if anyone did submit any questions during the registration process for the webinar, we have had some team members responding to those in the Q&A section. So we have addressed those there. I can see there's been a few questions coming through, which is good. Keep them coming. But just quickly touching on the mandatory rollout of sheep and goat eID. This is just a friendly reminder that from January 1 this year, all newborn sheep and managed goats born from Jan 1 do need to have that eID device in the animal's ear before it leaves your property. That's in line with the new rollout of the sheep and goat eID, which was agreed on by all the state and territory governments and industry. And then that second date there, Jan 1, 2027, all livestock nationally, regardless of age, will have to have that eID device in the animal's ear before they leave your property. So just a little reminder on that one there. Also, looking at the sheep and goat eID space, we've been having some issues lately around the appropriate use of species-specific devices. So there's another reminder that the devices that you use for sheep and goat and cattle are species-specific. So that is when you go on to order your devices through your manufacturer or your state or territory government DPI, it's important to tell them what species you're ordering the devices for. So that is sheep devices for sheep, goat devices for goats. And you can typically tell because they'll have that that species code in the NLIS ID printed on the outside of the tag. For breeder tags in sheep, that'll be an S, and for breeder tags in goats, that'll be a K. And then post breeder for sheep is T, and post breeder for goats, it's an L. So just making sure that we're using the right devices for the right animals when we're tagging. Moving on, another little reminder about completing your NLIS transfers. It is the receiver's responsibility to complete these NLIS property-to-property transfers when you're moving animals. Typically, if you're moving these to sale yards, feedlots, processors, they will complete the transfers for you. If you're selling property-to-property or on online selling platforms like Auctions Plus, you'll have to make sure it's getting done either by the receiver if you're sending them, or if you're the receiver, you. But it is always good. You can, if you're sending livestock, you can go on there and complete the transfer yourself. It's always handy to check those things just to make sure your property is reflected accurately in the NLIS database. But if you are needing some extra help in relation to sheep and goat eID, we've got lots of resources on the Integrity Systems Company website. We've also got some resources on the Sheep and Goat Traceability Task Force website, and there'll be plenty on the Queensland Department of Agriculture website as well to step you through exactly what your requirements are there when moving livestock and tagging livestock. But without diving too deep into that, I will now hand it over to Natasha to provide an update on the NLIS Database Uplift Project.
Thanks, Xander. You've heard Xander just then talking about the importance of the NLIS database and getting those transfers done in 2 days. But our intel is telling us that not many people, currently only about 20% of producers are aware that we're actually uplifting the current database. So what does uplift mean? It's a technical term for saying we're going to make it better, we're modernising it, and it is going to look different when you log on. Let's reflect on the year 2000. We were all freaking out about Y2K and whether we were going to be able to access our bank accounts. We were playing Snake on the Nokia 3310. And this was also the year that the NLIS was released. Just having a bit of trouble with my slides. There we go. The NLIS was also released back in the year 2000. Now, I'm getting a bit past it, and when I reflect, I go that the year 2000 wasn't that long ago, but 25 years ago was when the NLIS was released. So why are we uplifting the NLIS database? Well, it's the major tool for protecting market access and food safety and protecting Australia against exotic diseases. So it's a vitally important tool. It's getting a bit past it. Like I said, it's now 25 years old, and we're building it for the future. So future-proofing livestock traceability in the decades to come. We're looking at improving the user experience, so making it easier for producers, regulators, and industry. And the core purpose of that functionality will be a modernised, secure infrastructure. As we all know, in the year 2025, we're not answering any calls that come through because they might be spam or a scammer, and cybersecurity is really increasing. So we're ensuring that we have the secure infrastructure into the future. And we're tracking towards the 30th of June 2026 of when the project will be available to go live. And this has been supported by a $22.5 million grant from the Australian government. So the uplifted database, what we're trying to achieve is increased traceability due to improved usability. We know that you guys don't want to be stuck inside having to do all this compliance and regulation and having to spend hours to do it. We know you'd much rather be outside with your animals. So we're trying to develop an easier to use system. In the past, there's been long menus, and when you're looking for something, it's actually hard to navigate NLIS to find a report or what functionality you're trying to use. So we're simplifying the processes to get the job done quickly. Also, the improving the ability to upload large files. In the past, the files were a lot more simplistic, and now we're getting files with over 1 million lines coming in from device manufacturers and more demand for data. So we want to make that data available quickly and efficiently. And we're looking to improve the data quality because, of course, when you guys get the usability part right, the quality improves and it's maintained easier. As I said, the integration piece is really important too. So you've got the likes of AgriWeb, Outcross, AgriNow, different companies now, then different usability software systems that want to integrate into the back of NLIS to make your lives easier. So we're looking at the easier integration as well. And as I said before, we will maintain to keep that data safe, secure, and up to date by having some really high quality security systems. Also provide better reporting and analytics. We know that those reports and the notifications mostly are a biggest contentious issue with NLIS 1.0, and we want to make that simple and that you know what to do when those warnings come through. So this has been an ongoing project for 3 years. A lot of people aren't aware of it. It's been a bit of a journey. So you can see there we started back in July 23 when we were trying to define what the new uplifted database would need to do. We're currently in the time to build phase and the stage transition phases. So we're looking at how the system works, what it needs to do, ensuring it has that same capability that we have now. So those are that's where we are. And as I said earlier, we'll be looking to release the new system by July 2026. Now, to support what I'm talking about, I'm going to hand over to our guru, John, who will give you a view of what it's going to look like in the future. There you go, John. You take the slides.
Thanks, Natasha. So just to kind of put it into context, as Natasha said, the current system is 25 years old, and it's in kind of need of, I suppose, a bit of a facelift. And as Natasha mentioned, at the moment it's not as easy as it can be to find out what you guys want to do. So as we've said multiple times, we don't want you guys interacting and staying a long time within these systems. So the core focus of the new design was to work out how do we make it easier, more usable, makes sense, knowing that the system as it is now has evolved over the last 25 years to include more species and more complexity within the industry that we work in. So as we said, we've currently got these drop down patterns, and it's not kind of immediately clear unless you've trained yourself over 25 years to know exactly where to go. So to kind of flip it over and have a look at what we're proposing to move to in terms of the design, here is just a representation of the main landing page that producers like yourself will typically interact with when you log in. Core focus on is really just playing back the information that you need to know within one page, so you don't have to dig through the system to find it. So how are we going to do that? I'll scroll down the page and I'll kind of explain each of the different sections quickly to hopefully give you a flavour of where we're going with this. This is as a result of multiple rounds of user testing with different groups within the industry, and working with our vendor partner to bring in commonly used patterns that are out in other industries into our industry to make it like a much more user-friendly experience. So as I scroll down, what we want to do is just play back any information around the pick that you have, calling out any statuses, any programs, the species that you've indicated that you interact with, really clear up and front to the user. As we scroll down, this section is around really what do you want to do with the system. Then there's two ways that we look at you guys engaging with this section. The first is the ability to search through the system. You might have a particular ID that you're interested in. You might want to search the pick register for another pick, or a particular action, or even a transaction that you may have done in the past that you just want to double check has been confirmed correctly. So in that example, if we've got a transaction ID, we can click on the search bar. We can tell the system that I'm searching by a transaction ID, put that ID in, have a search, and it will play back any of the results that we find, much the same as any other search engine that you might use outside of NLIS. So we can see that it's found a transaction. It tells us the date, what type of transaction, who did it, and the date that it was done. If you want even further more information, you can click on the view button, and then that will tease out even more information about that. So we know it was a movement, shows the movement from the two, the type of species in the movement, the number of heads, the number of devices that were added, any kind of NVD or eNVD references, and then it will go and list out the number of devices if you need that level of detail. So that's just one pattern to save you some time in getting right to the information that you're after. The other big pattern that we want to present to the user is just these quick action buttons. This is customizable, so you can pick the 4 most common things that you would typically use NLIS for. And what this also highlights is there's a couple of other things that we've been doing in the background to increase that usability and that consistency in the system. And you'll see some new terms and phrases that we're going to use in the new system. So in terms of livestock movement, we noticed in the current system, there's multiple different transactions that represent a movement of stock from one place to another. So we're consolidating those all into one transaction, so that it's much easier for you guys. If you do a movement, then you go to one place. You don't have to pick a particular scenario or transaction to do that. The next one is devices on pick. So we're moving away from that tag reference, knowing that there's multiple ways of IDing the different species within the system. So a nice generic term like devices will cover, what is there now and what potentially there might be in the future. The devices on pick will be basically a representation of your holdings on the pick. So when you go through to that, you'll be able to clearly see all the devices that are currently being registered onto your pick. Livestock inquiry is basically the beast inquiry that you guys will be familiar with, but taking that reference to cattle out and making it general across all the species that NLIS. And then obviously, pick reconciliation might be another common quick action that you guys might do within the system. As we scroll down the landing page, we'll be able to summarize the latest movements on and off your property so that you can reconcile with your own knowledge of movements and making sure that people are doing the correct registration of those those important transactions within NLIS. And then finally, in the bottom section, we can call out any particular notifications. And as Natasha mentioned, you'll be able to kind of opt in and out of notifications so that you're only getting the notifications that are important to you, and we're not spamming you with multiple things. We're looking at that integration with the eNVD more heavily, so we'll be able to call out any incoming or outgoings that you have on your pick. And then finally, there'll be a graphical representation of those devices or your holdings on your pick. So you can use this as a call to action to see that that the devices are staying stagnant, but if you see the graph growing or reducing as not expected, then that's a call to action to maybe do a pick reconciliation to understand if there's things going on that you need to resolve, or following up on people that are doing movements involving your pick. That's it for me. Thanks, Natasha.
Thanks, John. So I hope you found that demo insightful, and we don't want you just to go, wow, that looks good. We want you to share about it, talk to your neighbours about it. If you're at your kids' sport or you're at the barbecue, just say you've seen it, because we just want to get the message out there that there is a change coming. As John mentioned, there's been a high level of consultation and engagement right across the industry, right across the supply chain. So there was 3 rounds of usability testing to get to what you've just seen now, which is that look and feel and how to position things. There's also a high level of governance and oversight over this project. As you can imagine, it's a pretty important tool for the entire red meat industry and potentially the whole of Australia. So there is about through 4 levels of governance, including 3 reference groups. So there's an industry-focused reference group, state and territory-focused reference group, and a technical reference committee. And that's with people that have quite a bit of IT knowledge and that they feed in the information and advisory to ISC. So just to give you some insight into how much engagement there's been directly with the industry working group, we're up to over 135 plus hours now. So there's definitely a lot of effort going in right across the supply chain. Now, the demo that John did was quite quick. So just if you're at any industry events and we're there, we've attended quite a few, 20 plus already this year, since March 2025. So if we're there, come up, ask, have a look, and we can let you have it, look at it on our laptops and see how it's going, and you can make some suggestions or questions that you may have of how you are understanding the system. So just come up and engage with us. We're more than happy to give you a whirl on the new database. So what does it really mean for you? There's been a bit of feedback. It's taken me 20 years to get used to the old one, but we know that this is going to be a new opportunity for NLIS to make it easier for those right across the supply chain. But we do not understand that it will be a big change for a lot of people. So we'll be having a detailed training plan that is being developed at the moment, and it will be shared as soon as it is available. But don't worry, we'll be also assisting producers in industry with the how-to guides, training webinars, hands-on demonstration and examples, and regular updates and opportunities to ask questions. And our wonderful contact centre will be available as well to support producers. It's open from 7 till 7 on a weekday and 9 to 5 on Saturdays and Sundays. And they'll also have a 24/7 chatbot available that can actually answer some quite technical questions. So we will be supporting you through that as well. Okay, that is it from me. I shall now hand over to Doug to give you a rundown on all things Queensland.
Thanks, Natasha. Afternoon all. I'll just give you a quick update of NLIS within Queensland. Next slide, please. All right, some of this has been covered, so I'll just be reinforcing it. Sheep and goat implementation, Queensland has gone along with the other jurisdictions on the implementation of eID for sheep and goats. Lambs and kids born on or after the 1st of January 2025 must be identified with NLIS accredited eID devices before they leave the property of birth. From the 1st of January 2027, that all sheep and goats leaving the property will be required to be identified with an NLIS approved eID device. Next slide, please. So, at the moment, all sheep and goats leaving a property of residence must be identified with an approved device. That is either an electronic eID device or a visual device. So the eID for sheep and lambs and kids born after the 1st of 2025, visual devices or eID devices for any animals born prior to the 1st of January 2025. That will, as I said before, run up till after the 1st of January 2027, everything will be required to be eID tagged. Once again, you need a full and accurate completed eNVD waybill to accompany the livestock movements. And there is a device-free pathway for harvested rangeland goats in Queensland, which Elizabeth went through. So I'll put the Queensland spin on that. Next slide, please. So we did have a scheme, a funding scheme, a grant scheme for producers to assist in the implementation of sheep and goat eID. That has finished. It was taken up by all industry sectors, giving them the ability to get a subsidy for readers and devices. Next slide, please. Harvested rangeland goat device-free pathway. As Elizabeth said, to meet the harvested rangeland goat definition must be been captured from a wild state, not been born a result of a managed breeding program, or subject to any animal husbandry or treatment procedures. So to get the harvested rangeland goat NVD, which allows you to then use a harvested rangeland goat NVD when you are consigning your harvested rangeland goats. In Queensland, you require a permit from the DPI that says that you are a harvested rangeland goat producer, therefore you can access the LPA modules to do and get the LPA NVD for harvested rangeland goats. Next slide, please. So with the harvested rangeland goats, I'll just touch on something else. In Queensland, what you do is you apply to the DPI for a approval to move harvested rangeland goats without a device. You must be if you are catching harvested rangeland goats on a particular pick or on several picks, your name is registered against those picks as a person capturing harvested rangeland goats. You then get an approval letter that says you are able to access the harvested rangeland goats LPA modules and NVDs. When you go into LPA, there is a section there. You attach that letter. That is your approval. You then do your modules and you have access to either the paper or the eID, the eNVD for the harvested rangeland goats NVDs, which is what you use when you are consigning your harvested rangeland goats. So livestock removements within Queensland, all livestock must be identified with an approved NLIS device before leaving the property of residence. Once again, a fully completed NVD waybill. And as John said before, the receiver is to notify the NLIS database within 48 hours of the animals arriving at their destination. And once again, it is a legal requirement that the animals have a device prior to movement. Next slide, please. Now, interstate movements. This is cattle, sheep, goats. Livestock must be identified in accordance with the legal requirements of the state and territory they are in and moving to. Some market opportunities require proven traceability for individual animals, and the NLIS movements are part of that. An example of that is EU for cattle producers. Regarding going into other states, a lot of our western and southern sheep and goats go into the southern states. If the southern states require that all animals have an eID device, that is your requirement of what you have to do to meet that jurisdiction. Some other states require year of birth coloured tags for the sheep and goats. If that is a requirement of the state you're going into, that is what you're required to do to move into that state. Next slide, please. So compliance. The DPI Biosecurity Queensland is always looking at compliance. It's monitored across all livestock sectors and livestock species. At the moment, the property to property movements, which is going from one pick number to another, are the area of focus, and compliance is being heavily targeted at that specific movement. The receiver is responsible for uploading movements within 48 hours. Once again, a fully completed NVD waybill is required for your specific species, and no device, no movement. Main thing is the receiver's responsibility, whether it's sheep, goats, cattle, pigs, to notify the database within 48 hours of the completion of the movement of those devices. Next slide, please. So if you need any further information, my advice is call the call centre on 13 25 23, raise your issue. They'll put you onto a person that can assist you. And we also have a lot of information regarding requirements, sheep, goat, cattle, pigs, etc. on our website. Cool. Thanks, Xander. I'll hand back to you.
Thanks for that, Doug. Great to hear everything that's going on in that space, and thanks for lending us your time today to present. Just building on what Doug's just presented, before we wrap up for the day, or for the webinar at least, we'll just cover off the top 3 integrity takeaways from today's session. First and foremost, to jump in and complete your animal welfare management plan, and share your geolocation if it's relevant to your operation. Number 2, we saw some of the great improvements that John presented to the eNVD system. Jump in and give that a go. It's come leaps and bounds in the last few years, so give that a crack. And number 3, keep an eye out for that NLIS, that uplifted NLIS database that's being built at the moment. We can expect that in about 12 months' time, mid-2026. We're hoping to get that released out to everyone. So keep an eye out for that. That does just about bring us to a close for today's webinar. Hopefully, if you did have any questions, we've answered those. If there are any unanswered, we'll get those answered and distributed out with a post-webinar pack that we'll email out to all registrants within the next week, and that'll have the Q&As that we've addressed, the recording, and a bunch of other resources in relation to what we've presented. Also, when we jump off the call today, you'll get hit with a post-webinar survey. We'd love to hear your feedback on how we've done today. If we did well, let us know. If we've done poorly, let us know. But yeah, we'd love to hear from you. So thanks again, and thanks for joining us here today, and enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. Cheers.